All right, man. Welcome to the Distro Boss Podcast. Al-Ebrahim, thank you for being here. You're a proper tech bro. A
A recovering tech bro, I hope.
recovering
Thank you,
tech bro,
Sav.
yeah.
Great to
From
be here.
Kuwait to Silicon Valley. That's one thing
Yeah,
I
it's been
picked
a
up.
journey. It's been a
Yeah.
journey.
I mean, we're going to talk about you're a founder of an AI company, and it's not just like any kind of AI. You're really at the bleeding edge, the forefront of well, AI is at the bleeding edge right now. And so whatever you're doing in that space, if you've got something that has some semblance or some kind of a use case, even if it hasn't fully been identified yet, there's you've got this massive blue ocean ahead of you. And I think any kind of conversation here is going to be super valuable just for me, if let alone anyone listening. But before we get into the technical stuff in terms of what you're building, where you're going with what you're building, what kind of applications it has, how it kind of stacks up to like what we're already familiar with OpenAI and Google's DeepMind, or Genesis now, whatever it's called. Like, it's such a fast moving space. But before we get there, let me understand. Like, so from Kuwait to Silicon Valley, I know you're at a very, very nice university up there, Berkeley. So just give us your backstory. Let us know who you are.
Right on. So I'm Ali. I started my career in tech back in 2011. That's when I built my first app. It was in the consumer space, so for users, for end users, as in iTunes for news. That was when paywalls were coming up. So I was very, very proud of that idea, even though it didn't work. But that's where I got my first battle scars, as like watching an idea go from product to like actual people's hands, and sometimes they don't like it. And I dug deeper into startups since then. I worked at the incubators at NYU when I was an undergrad there. I got a few more experience with companies, but then I started my own in 2015 that got funded by Techstars. Learned a ton there as well, even though that company didn't really move forward. We couldn't find our fit in the market. So then I've been cutting my teeth deeper into product management, which is my bread and butter. But then in 2018, I dropped the product management world to go full time into AI research. So back in
Just to clarify, what product management. That's really like the complete management of like a tech product, right? So that's you building out, managing multiple disciplines, like silos of developers, the complete end-to-end build out. Is that right, or am I mistaken?
Yeah, and that was a natural growth for me as like a little entrepreneur doing my first app back in 2011, because it's the same process, right? You first have to have an idea of who you're building it for, what they want. You kind of go through the process, prototyping, wireframing, all the way up to the finished product or the beta, and you kind of have to measure the success in the market. So that's what a product manager does in a general sense at a larger company, except you're also talking to like more people because there's more people at the company that you have to coordinate with. Like a product manager is usually between engineering and the business side in that sense. Um,
Got
so
it.
that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
a natural path for me from my entrepreneurial ambitions. A good way to kind of keep the lessons going while I'm not doing a startup.
Okay. So you were and where did you were working? So you were a research fellow or something to that effect, right, at Berkeley?
Yeah, so I worked my way up the product management track through startups, like in the startup space, to become a VP of product at a company called Hammerhead. We were building consumer electronics like a bicycle GPS. I left that company in 2018 when I went full time on AI research. So that was a huge shift for me. I kind of worked as like an independent researcher, just moved back in with my parents to save some cash and give myself more runway. And then in 2020, I ended up at UC Berkeley with a grant to be a visiting researcher there for 1 year to flesh out the research I had started. And that's what led to AO Labs, which is the venture I'm working on currently. A lot of interesting things going on there, but that's my background in a nutshell. So, I straddle the worlds between product and research in AI specifically today.
Okay. All right then. So when with AO Labs, I know there's a see that's your baby, right? That's the
Oh yeah,
thing that you've been working on.
yeah,
Yeah.
I've been thinking about that for years.
Yeah, and that's the crazy thing, right? Because to people like me, AI is so new. I picked it up when The Economist started talking about it. Like, and that
Really?
wasn't, I mean, to you, it's probably a decade old. Like for me, it's
Was
like a
so that
couple
was
of
like
years.
when you say the Economist picked it up, you're talking about like after ChatGPT, after November 2022?
Yeah, it's when like, right before ChatGPT kind of became public, all the newspapers sort of pick it up. I'm a reader of The Economist, and so I start to read these big like special reports on the new deployed. I always knew AI existed to a degree, like machine learning and all that kind of stuff. You hear about it, but I think as a consumer, I've never really gone further than just understand that there's some real complex stuff behind Netflix's, just choice in terms of what it displays you based on your habits and what you watch. But it's like, and I understand that there's like, when I'm, I work in the world of like distribution channels. So when I'm selling stuff, a lot of the conversations I have is like how building up a network of channel partners to sell a certain product or whatever is more effective, and then working with a machine learning algorithm that's running your ads, for instance, via a media buyer on Google or Facebook, or so I'm always having to go against the competition. So as far as like my knowledge on it, it's really just on that surface level, just to kind of combat a sales pitch so that I can succeed in doing the thing that I'm trying to do, which is nothing to do with AI, right? I'm leveraging the meatware behind hardware, like finding the humans in
The meatware, I like
relationship.
that.
Yeah. The wetware, the meatware, I think there's a few different ways you could say it, but like, I'm leveraging the people that already have connections. So that's my world and I know that everything's going to get like, even I'm worried, like every AI is going to encroach everywhere in so many. It's such a generalized like platform. I say platform like it's something that's not moving. Like it's so general in terms of its application. It's kind of hard to see where it's going. So what's AO Labs doing? What are you doing there? Like
Yeah,
what was the initial idea, and now what has it become? That's the better question.
right on. So I encountered AI myself back in 2011 when I was at NYU. Jan LeCun and Gary Marcus were on campus as professors. Gary Marcus also had a startup in the incubator where I worked, where I first got my startup experience. So I was aware of what was going on at some level as an undergrad, learning about neural networks. I dropped in on some graduate level classes as well. And so if you take a step back, like let me give you a little bit of a context on AI, and then I can drop into AO Labs, because what you were
Yeah,
suggesting is very true
yeah.
for a
Tell
lot
us,
of people, right? They
please.
kind of just encountered AI all of a sudden, right?
Yeah,
But if you peel the onion back, as I had to as a researcher, which was really fun if you're into history, it's like AI is really really old. It's as old as computer science,
oh wow.
right? And so actually, if you peel the onion even back, information and intelligence used to be synonymous words. It was only with Shannon information theory that we actually formally defined information as zeros and ones and all of that stuff. But before that,
Okay.
intelligence and information were used synonymously. You can see that in the predecessor to that researcher, Claude Shannon. So AI really starts with computer science. It's like inseparable, right? And so you go back all the way to the 60s too. You have people like I.J. Good, a researcher and mathematician, who was talking about an intelligence explosion. Like, hey, if we can build these things now, at some level they're going to self-improve or get smarter and smarter, where they'll just be smarter than anything else, like an intelligence explosion. So, a lot of these ideas are very old in some sense. And so then if you take another step, another look at this space, it's like you have computer science. Within computer science, you have AI. Within AI, you have machine learning, right? AI as a field has gone through a lot of changes. So you remember there was like the IBM Watson or
Yes.
IBM Deep Blue beating the chess champion. That was a huge deal back in the 80s, I think, or the 90s.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
IBM Watson. Actually, now you say that, that goes back to at least 2012, from when
yeah,
I think somewhere around there when I remember reading about Watson.
Watson beat Jeopardy recently in 2012. Before that, IBM beat chess, right? And
Oh
then
wow, okay.
DeepMind, a company in the UK that Google acquired, beat Go, the game of Go,
Yeah.
recently as well. Um, but so yeah, AI has, as a field, has been through what we call AI winters, where there's so much enthusiasm because of this idea of superintelligence, but then reality doesn't meet the expectations, and then kind of funding crashes like a bubble, but a bit worse. And these are documented on Wikipedia. There's been two like massive AI winters. So AI research was really dead when I was in NYU in 2011, 2012. 2012, there was a research paper, um, AlexNet and ImageNet, that really kind of like put the field back on the map, that regained people's interest in AI, because all of a sudden we had the data to do things with it, to actually make the old algorithms work. So in 2012, we had this idea of neural networks finally applied to images, and that's what kind of started us today on the current trajectory today.
I feel like
Is that making sense so far, Sav?
it
Or
is, yeah. I mean, I'm just trying to remember like that, because you kind of see technology or new ideas crop up that are like super interesting, super complex. Like the application for them is immense, and then suddenly they kind of just disappear a little bit. They can't. All the marketing on it just kind of just fades away. I mean, I think you
yeah,
saw it with electric
sometimes.
cars initially until Ukraine, and then as soon as like the gas was being threatened to be turned off, suddenly, if you've noticed, like how everything turned in, every commercial everywhere was suddenly for an electric car. Every single car manufacturer suddenly had a fleet that they were suddenly presenting. It's like it just came back huge. And then another example is like the metaverse. Remember what happened to the metaverse? It's like the only person that seems to be talking about the metaverse right now is Zuckerberg, right? It's like he kind of like named his company the meta. Like there was so much talk about the metaverse, and I feel like it got to the point where everyone was super excited, super hyped up about it, and then they realized, well, hang on a sec, how are we going to buy something from Louis Vuitton in this metaverse reality and then walk into like a Gucci store with the same thing? Because if we have, the IP would have to be borrowed. You'd have to kind of share it somehow so that it could live in a different environment. So how could we have this global metaverse? I feel
Yeah.
like that's where it was going, and it was like, well, we can't figure it out. And then suddenly AI comes back up because it's kind of like, well, they've got the answer. I'm
Well, we
pretty
had
sure.
crypto in the middle somewhere. So we
And
had
then
we
crypto
had
in the
crypto.
middle, yeah, blockchains. Everyone was talking about nodes. Every business, there was initially it was like the scammy stuff with the ICOs, and then it kind of rose, and then everyone got scared of it and backed off. Then there was the blockchain application, and
Yeah.
every company on planet Earth
Yeah,
was like,
things ebb
"We're
and flow for sure. To some degree, that is going to happen to AI as well today. The exuberance is just a bit too much, and it's happened historically. We have a saying like, if something's happened once, if something's happened twice, it'll happen a third time, right? So, I do believe there's going to be a correction in the AI space, and that actually was a bit of what informed my work at AO Labs. I mean, I can talk about that a little bit in this context, if that's
yeah,
yeah.
because I know that
It's like
you've built your own you've built your own neural network of sorts, right? Like you've put it out there, it's learning, you can train it. I know you spoke about it briefly, sort of top funnel, surface level, but it's explain that. Yeah.
yeah.
You
Well,
don't want me
let me give some more
summarizing it.
context first too. Like maybe this is something that would be interesting for the viewers. The technology powering driverless cars, the technology that's making driverless cars drive, like full self-driving in Tesla, is almost exactly the same as the technology that underpins ChatGPT. Right?
Wow.
It's the
Well,
same type of.
he actually made a point of saying that once. Actually, he said someone was comparing ChatGPT to Grok, I think, and he was like, just so you know, the AI inside Tesla's cars could beat. He was making a statement
It's the same.
that it could
It's the
beat
same.
OpenAI's thing.
Yeah, it's the same. Like you've seen that some videos where there's a bounding box. There's a box like the algorithm's applying a box to identify objects.
Yeah.
That's the same thing in ChatGPT, and it's the same thing in driverless cars because you need to know where you're going to not bump into things. So how do you classify if this is a child or if this is a trash bag on the floor, right? What is
Mm.
the intelligence behind that classification? So it's really the same technology, the same application of neural networks, and in some sense, driverless cars aren't ready because driverless cars, they're still not super reliable. We can't rely on them the way we expect to, or the way Elon Musk has expected to. It's the same thing with the hallucination problem in GPT, right?
Well, that's a worrying
It's
thing. The
technically it's
hallucination.
exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
So
because having a hallucination in like something that you type up can be forgiven, and you can edit it, you can catch it. Especially when you give it like a complex math problem to figure out, like, oh look, you just botched the numbers, or you just made it make sense when it doesn't. But when it does that in a moving vehicle, that could be potentially something
right,
catastrophic.
Right. And then you think about like, okay, we have this API from OpenAI to use ChatGPT in applications, to put GPTs in applications. How do we manage around that hallucination or reliability problem? What is the right
Mm.
way to build this? Those questions are a bit on. I think those are the questions that are going to temper the reality. So that's where I was looking at it as a researcher, because back in 2011 I had this intuition that something was missing. Because when you're training these neural networks, like in the driverless cars or like in ChatGPT, you need labeled data, or you need somebody to say that this is the right data. So you have thousands of hours of simulations that they've had these cars train on, including real footage as well. All the miles that Tesla cars have driven are used for training. ChatGPT has been trained on the whole internet, but they seem to be missing something, because we're still not able to really reduce this hallucination problem or this reliability problem. It's hard to say that the driverless car really understands what a child is on the road when it's doing its thing.
Okay.
So in my research, in my journey, I kind of like, it came to me that this is really because we're giving the labels to the AI as we're training it constantly. So you look at GPT, it's generative pre-trained transformer. It's pre-trained by design, because by design you have to show it all of the label data, which is all the text it's been trained on, and then in application it'll give you similar to that. But there's
Okay.
always this gap between pre-training and applying. That's because we're giving it the labels. We have to pre-train it. We have to give it the labels and then apply it.
Right. So it's just
Uh,
taking this massive data bank, that's the internet or whatever, all this driving data, and it's now just kind of making sense of that on its own accord. Is that what you're saying?
it's predicting the next if you look at all of this, what is the next logical thing from all of this? Yes, that's effectively what it's doing, right? Like, you give ChatGPT a sentence, it'll complete the sentence in the most reasonable sounding way when you say it's smart. You give a driverless car a sequence on the road, it'll predict the next frame to predict what to do.
Right. Oh, I
And
see. And now I'm seeing the link with AO.
yeah, and so AO Labs, we were saying like, okay, hold up, guys, this is getting smarter. I've seen this tech since 2011, at least myself. It's been getting smarter and smarter because we have more data and we have more compute, right? But it seems like we're not able to fix that problem. And then taking a step back from it is like, look at humans or look at animals, look at pets. We're constantly being trained, right? Like when I was at school, I was like, you said I was so smart. Thank you. Like when I was at school, I was a little bit of a nerd for sure. So I was like learning math and whatever. And at the same time, I was biting my nails. And I popped out of school with like a lifelong habit of learning to bite my nails. Right, and that maybe I was pre-trained for calculus, and then I know, but it's like we have aspects of our intelligence that are continuously trained, and that to me seemed like it was, and it is completely missing from AI today.
Oh,
Again,
so
it's in
hang
the
on a
name,
sec. So you're
GPT,
saying Chat
generative pre-trained.
GPT, I think this is where this is where I'm slow with it. So you have to forgive me. And hopefully I'm not too slow and I'm acting as proxy to the audience. So when it comes to the GPT element, you're saying that it's been pre-trained, it has this massive data bank, and it's making the next logical step. But it's that data bank you're saying is not growing organically. It's not constantly being added to, or you just have to wait for the next update. Is that really?
Well, you do have to some degree. It's a little bit of both. You have to wait until the next update. That's like GPT-5 or GPT 4.5 or whatever. Whenever these companies release a new foundation model, that means they've spent the compute to train it on all of that data, which is not trivial. We're talking like millions of dollars in energy.
Yeah.
um, but there is an aspect they have, like reinforcement learning from human feedback, which so it can, like, to some limited degree, learn continuously. But it doesn't solve the hallucination problem, because like when we as this is digging deeper into AO Labs a little bit. When we as humans learn, or when animals learn, like when I teach my dog to fetch, they're applying a label of their own. I'm not applying a label, right? So that's a little bit of the distinction. So like if I like my dog, when I train my dog to sit at my command, and he sits in my command, in the dog's brain, they don't have a label for the word sit, and they're not thinking of sit. They're thinking treats, right? They
Hmm.
have their own definition because they've been self-labeling the whole time. Um,
Oh, I see.
so that's missing in AI completely, and we're trying to do it in some sense backwards, but it's not. I think that's why I went back to the drawing board on the research side and dug deep into this topic as a researcher, because I was like, if we can build something, if we want to build something like a dog, we kind of have to maybe start simpler and build our way up. So and you consider that the AI today, they're just building these massive algorithms to try to get more and more data. But again, I think that approach is great, but it's missing something that I'm trying to do with AO Labs.
Yeah. I feel like almost like maybe one day they'll meet in the middle.
I hope
It's
so. I
like,
mean, it is something like that, right? Like we have if you think of the human experience, we have like I can tell myself I'm going to go to the gym. I have my thing here. I'm going to do it. Rationally, I know I should, but then when it comes to it, I sometimes don't feel like it, and I just don't do
yeah.
it. We have a little bit of both, for sure, in our experience of intelligence. So I don't know what the future looks like in terms of merging with that stack, but in history of technology, right? This is a branch that has been growing for a while, the AI GPT branch. I kind of went back to the drawing board and I'm trying to think of a different branch that could
I
eventually
see.
merge,
Well, I
right?
think that's so your machine, I'm just gonna call it a machine for the sake of simplicity, is learning on the go based on like the nuance of like the direct one-to-one interaction, as opposed to
Yes.
this
So
massive data bank.
you can trace back its history of how it's been rewarded to see why it behaved that way. Just like my dog, if I say sit and give it a treat and it sits and I give it a treat, I can relate to why that dog is understanding sit in that way. It's not a black box to me the way GPT is a black box
Right.
to
It's not
people.
like a hey, this is the reasons why dogs do this. So apply this logic. This is the reason why your dog is doing it because it believes that there is a treat.
That's actually a really good way of saying it, Sav. Yeah, instead of like trying to apply a general, yeah, exactly. So I talk about local training. You're able to train it locally or train it continuously. It's been hard to explain these ideas, especially with the enthusiasm around GPTs.
Mm.
But that's good things take time.
Well, yeah. I mean, I remember, and I'm gonna go back to one of the things that we spoke about right before this podcast. Not right before the first conversation that we had actually, and it stuck with me. It was like, why would you want? So let's say they have like home robots. This is what you said. You said that if you were to be able to buy, they mass produce home robots like iRobot, right? Like the kind, like like something that could live in your house that you would trust and have. Why would you want it trained on this massive data set and not know what you want or learn from you or learn how to be in your domain? Because if you're actually letting this thing live with you, if you're letting it be that close to you, like you'll want it to know your details, your nuances, you'll want it to learn from you in the way you expect it, and you want it to acknowledge things in the way that you want them acknowledged, as opposed to relating everything to this wider data set.
And you want to be able to understand it in some sense, like relate to it. Have an understanding of its behavior that you can
It
control.
can kind of give you the nod, like how to speak to it. It's like when you have like family or friendships, like you're able to like communicate almost unspoken. It's like you're kind of building that same relationship up with the AI.
And that would be a great world, right? That would be a great world. Like another way of saying what you were suggesting is like, how would you be able to, can you trust that home robot if it's pre-trained by Google?
Yeah,
Like I wouldn't. I mean, I have problem trusting my phone. We have issues with that in our society right now.
you're right.
We
Yeah.
talked about driverless cars where they're trying to pre-train them for the world, and then you have all these edge cases in computer science language. What happens at the edge of like a paper bag on top of a baby? What happens in that situation? Who knows? You have all these little edge cases that come up, and the driverless cars, even though with all their data, they failed to live up to that. So when I think of the robot in my home, I'm like, hell yeah! Like it doesn't seem. It seems like something's missing for that, for sure. So that's what we're trying to build up to. The robot for the home, with our code, the way it's set up, like I told you the example of a dog. A dog has a dog brain shape to do what it does, right? We'd have to start with something simpler to try to be able to build it, which is what we're doing. So the humanoid robot droid, that's like version 10 of our software if we get to
Okay.
it. You know what I mean? But by that point, then that like to get a bit more metaphysical in some sense, like the reason I can relate to my dog is because I have a little bit of a dog brain in me. Like, I also. So, yeah, we need to kind of build up to a system that you can actually relate to in a humanoid android level. It's not something that can
Wow.
happen. Yeah.
How
Um,
far? So how far along that journey are you? Because you've got the research, you've got the theory, you've got the idea, and all that kind of. Where has that taken you so far? What have you kind of put together? I mean, if you're able to talk about it, because I know a lot of the
yeah, for
stuff is
sure. No,
like,
I'm actually looking for collaborators, and it's been a tough project to get off the ground, which is relevant to talking about, distribution. I tried to run a strategy around doing it as a startup last year, and it wasn't really ready. I wasn't able to run that strategy effectively. But just to answer first more plainly where I am or where the project is right now. Yeah, we have the research, we have the technology in the sense of we have working code, and that code is, I didn't pull it out of a hat. It's like we're on the shoulders of giants. We're based on research from the 80s that has been forgotten, a type of neural network that people forgot about in the current enthusiasm. So we've adapted it. We've built that in Python. We have it working. We also have an API for developers to play with it instead of having to like load it up completely. And in terms of where it is in terms of intelligence, right? We're making things that can learn like a dog individually rather than generally, right? So right now we have our code working in theory, and we have it working at the level of what you would say is like a simpler creature than a dog, like a clam, right? So we don't think of clams as very intelligent, but there's actually anecdotes of clams that in laboratories have learned to stay open around shadows because usually there's no
oh,
predation and it just means a human's feeding them, right? So that's like a
ah,
simpler form of the dog learning or of the human learning, much simpler. And that's easier for as a research. That's what we started with modeling, to grok at this idea, and we have that working. So that's our version 0.1.1 right now.
okay. And so this clam level intelligence is like, I mean, it's so weird saying that, right? So what did you say? Clams, they can stay open in the shadows?
Yeah,
They
so clams usually close around shadows because it means a fish is coming to
oh,
eat it or whatever. But
okay.
there's anecdotes and studies of clams in captivity that have learned to stay open around shadows or have learned to recognize humans.
Oh, wow. Okay, so
It's the
they're
same as a
changing
dog, right?
behaviors
They're learning
they're changing behavior based on their situation,
yeah,
based on what's
relative
around
to
them.
them
They're
in
learning.
a way that's grounded to them, right? It's not like this abstract notion of intelligence that then ends up hallucinating. Like my dog's not so smart, but he's not hallucinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So what's the okay, 0.1.1 like, or like what's the, is there a business application for that, or does it have to get bigger first, or does that in and of itself have a commercial application? Like, can you see?
That's a great question. That was what I was working through last year. So I came out of Berkeley. I had the research. I had the code working now. I had talked to developers, friends of mine, and such. And I was thinking like, what next with the project, right? How to take this forward. So I had always had it in my mind to do it as a startup, given my background. So I gave that a shot in terms of a strategy, which was let's talk to 100 developers. From those 100 developers, let's see what conversations around possible applications pop out, and kind of run it like an enterprise sales thing, right? So, you want to get set up your. That was the strategy I was running at large because I didn't know offhand what applications were. I was so steeped in the research, right? So at that level of clam, at that basic level, so we went through that discovery process. Ended up building an application for a company called Netbox that does network automation. So they have a network automation software where you can view all of your network information in one place. And if you add a device to your network, you have to manually add, like, this is a router and this is whatever. And we built something that can predict what device you're adding because it's trained only on your network.
So it can live with inside a wall garden, only learning from what's within there.
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to
So
be good from a cybersecurity perspective.
yeah,
Like, I
so
don't want to hold
actually,
chat
cybersecurity was another application because cybersecurity also,
Okay.
like, you're continuously facing threats from the real world that are changing. the attacker.
Yeah.
So then that was another application we thought through. We built a few of them. Like the one we built the most was the network application. We couldn't sell it yet to the company, but we have the code to open and it's available. But it's a little bit back to the drawing board because companies weren't ready to really sign on to something still so experimental. We didn't have a super clear application yet. So I've been going back to the drawing board a little bit and just revitalizing the research and thinking through what strategy to do next to take it forward. We essentially have the code, and then it's a library, right? It's a library of code, and it's like you can build it in the shape of a clam, or you can build it in this shape for your application in this shape, right? So, yeah.
Wow, man. So it can do a lot already then. Basically. I mean, I could see
it's
that.
application specific, right? We're not
Yeah,
using
I'm
this to
thinking,
predict words. And we're not saying we have something general intelligence, but it can build up to be part of that.
well, is this something that, I mean, it's almost like the way you're saying it, it's like it could be white labeled almost, like it could be like packaged up and be like, it's like you're putting this brain inside a business and it's kind of doing its own thing once it's in there, right? Like, are you guys nurturing it, or like could their own developers then take it over?
The idea would be that their own developers take it over, right? So actually, as a business, like putting the startup hat on, that was this. You intuited the strategy I was anticipating, which was like being in the background as a provider of the core technology, almost like ARM microcontrollers, or like Linux in the background, right? We're the same way developers fork Linux and configure it as the operating system for their stack or server. Developers
Yeah.
would fork our code, configure it with the right number of neurons, like input, output, and pleasure, pain for their application, and then it can like learn continuously there, right?
Wow. I
So
feel like,
that's
yeah,
why I chose the name
this,
AO Labs too. It's like a name like in the background, like sciencey or whatever, because I didn't see this as a super consumer facing company, right?
well, I feel like companies, I mean, there's a lot of demand for AI developers, as I'm sure you know, and I know that with AI developers, you can really charge a high price tag right now, and I know because I've looked for myself for my own project, but then you're also stuck with the fact that there's not that many. It's like a finite resource right now, and so there's a lot more
Developers,
people
you mean
skilling up.
not that many AI developers?
Yeah. And so there's a lot more people skilling up to be able to hold that title. I am a specialist with AI applications, or integrating, various different models into, traditional process. I feel like what you're talking about is kind of opening up. It's like the Linux platform. It's giving the smaller businesses who don't need a full-on ChatGPT kind of brain to run something like you like an app, like even inside games, like it's like I can see this happening, like you having like a companion within a game,
Yeah.
to instead of having your +1 having to wait for your friend to come on, like you can literally have your in-game companion that knows you, works with you. Like I could see the application
The
there.
actual in-game companion is really cool. I thought of game like as a pet. I didn't think of an in-game companion like that you would be playing with to train. That's really cool.
Yeah.
I'm working on a Minecraft bot. So Minecraft is a really popular game, right? And
Yeah.
there's Minecraft bots that now play at a superhuman level, but they're pre-trained. So again, it's pre-trained on like all of YouTube Minecraft videos ever to play at that superhuman level. I'm building a simpler form of a Minecraft bot that is really stupid, but at least you can train it
Right.
at a rudimentary level. And yeah, I mean, so this is one day if we do raise venture capital, these are the projects I would kind of seed as part of that effort to kind of like build up the core code base, because all of those little efforts end up informing the core code base, just like Linux, right? Everybody who built on top of Linux extended Linux. So yeah, but I don't know. I've been going back to the drawing board and rethinking the strategy because we weren't successful doing this as a like B2B SaaS startup. I'm thinking more of doing a community oriented approach, just like opening up more of the
what stopped
research.
you with the SaaS startup? Like, was it just, and I remember you were talking about this. You mentioned this, like, oh, we had, it's like, we talked about the concept of having was having a solution and then looking for problems to solve,
Yeah.
going reverse and having a problem and like figuring out the solution. But the trouble is, and we mentioned this with AI or with the space that you're in, because it's at the bleeding edge, you're just kind of you're figuring stuff out. Like it's like these mathematical breakthroughs. It's now doing this. Okay, what's this good for? So you have to kind of create first and then find out where it can fit in society and how it can help
I push
businesses.
back on that a little bit. I think it's still a trap to create first and then find the thing in society. But that's okay. But that should be the realm of pure research, because
Okay.
if you have pure research, then trying to sell what they're doing, they're not gonna be as wide in their search. To some degree, that you have that in AI. That's why there's nothing really new coming out since 2012. It's just iterations on the same to this level. But we haven't been able. But if I take a step back, because I've fallen into this trap so much. Like even with my first product, I fell into that trap, right? In my first product, I was building it for myself because I really wanted it. I really wanted a better news reading experience. But maybe other people didn't have that problem. I didn't spend the time looking if other people had that problem. So and the most successful business I've worked with, Sav, the best business or the best experience I've had in a startup was at Hammerhead, where we had the clearest idea of who the customer is and who they are and what they want and why and like what the problem is for them. It was so clear. And I traced back the clarity I had as a product manager at that company to that insight with the customer.
Wow.
So
do they have like a traditional avatar? Like, here's our Stacy or Fred, and this is what Fred wants. This is what Fred likes. Is it like that or deeper?
it was like that, but we hadn't even defined it as an avatar or such. We just always talked about them because we knew who they were, and like the founder was one of those people himself. So he told me about this type of customer, and I saw the pattern more and more in the wild, and then you can more easily build around that customer, and that's how you make something people actually need. But to go back to like my take on this in another sense with AO Labs is like I really wanted to still do AO Labs as a research. I tried the startup path last year in that way, talking to 100 developers because as a Linux project it still could have worked that way. But I'm very honest where we don't want to be a problem looking for solutions, right? Sorry, we don't want to. It can be confusing to even talk about this. It's like let me paint another picture here. With like with AO Labs, when I think about it, the problem we're solving is a problem for the stack, for the AI stack. So that's why it's still in the research domain. We're not really ready for prime time as a consumer product. You compare this to AI that people are using, like GPT or large language models. To some degree, people are still struggling to find useful applications. So then it's like you ask yourself, if you were a person searching for those applications, how biased are you? Because you're already thinking it's a good product, right? That's the trap you can really fall into. And then, it can be a rabbit hole to climb out of, because you get
I can see
emotionally
that,
invested in the
you're so
product yourself.
vested as well.
Yeah, you get them because it's cool. Like for me, as a like I was just geeky, right? So you like you attach yourself to ideas and things, or you attach yourself to a solution that's not really solving a problem, right?
Yeah. So is that like the main challenge with the SaaS thing when you try to sell it as when you try to commercialize it as a B2B SaaS product? Was this the biggest thing that, like, did you have salespeople and they came back to you saying, "Look, man, we can't sell this because these guys don't even know what to do with it"? Like, like what was your biggest pushback on that?
There were no salespeople. It was me and my team a little bit. But yeah, we did get that feedback, right? It's like, we had great conversations with developers. They clicked with the concept similar to the way you clicked with it. But then most of them struggled to think of how to apply it to their work or to their application.
Got it.
The ones we did have conversations with were like the network company. We had conversations with Disney Plus around like a per user recommendation system instead of a pre-trained recommender for their streaming service. But all throughout that, I was trying to sell them on the software, on access to the software package, not as a product, because we didn't have a product yet. We didn't have an end-to-end product yet. But that strategy, it didn't work because it just didn't convert to a sale. the market wasn't ready in that way. Um, but I'm proud of myself for how I ran that process, because from my earlier lessons, I was like, you got to time box it, or you got to put a target, right? So the target was 100 developers. From 100
Uh-huh.
developers, I was hoping to get one paying application, one company that would pay because now they're using our code in their application. That was the success criterion I had for myself personally, so I don't get lost in the morass of what I'm doing. So I had
That's
to be
brilliant.
honest when we didn't have that, even though we got close. I had to be honest that we didn't have that, and just try to think of a different strategy now.
Okay. So the I guess the brains are still there, not just yours, but the neural network that you put together, the clan. And so now you're considering VC, or you've been approached, or you might think about
No, so
reaching
I
out.
ran that process of talking to 100 developers to try to get that conversion, to see what our B2B sales funnel would look like, to fundraise, right? So I was doing that as part of a strategy to fundraise, because I would have been able to show that traction and close on it. So I had great conversations with investors. Again, a lot of them clicked with it. Um, some at a very deep level, which is really cool. And if I had that sale, I would have been able to kind of close that round of funding. But it didn't materialize. So I had some angels lined up. I made a mistake there too, by the way. I should have immediately just collected the checks I had from angels, instead
Uh-huh.
of waited for a larger investor to bring them all in. But
Uh-huh.
I was waiting. Like you try to build conviction in where you are, and be honest with people's money and people's time. So you do the best you
So they
can.
were pledging. They were saying, okay, I'm going to invest X, and so you were like, okay, well, hang on to your money for now until this date or something. Is that what you were doing?
Yeah,
Or
I was kind of like, hang on to this money. I was waiting to get more of the customers closed, or move the customers to the finish line, and I was also
uh-huh.
waiting to kind of like attract a larger investor who could lead around.
Right.
Looking back, I should have done maybe a little bit of that process. Maybe I would have fared better with fundraising if I had
Yeah, I
done
mean,
those
it's
a bit
always better
sooner.
to have the cash in the bank and say, this is
Yeah,
money's on account.
more leverage
This
too.
is,
It's more leverage.
yeah, this is
But you know
money in
what?
the bank.
I did start this from research, so I didn't want to like build the business if the research is not ready to support products.
Got it.
So revisiting it now, I don't think we'll go the VC route. I'd actually love to just find a way to bootstrap it, maybe through a community effort.
But
So that's
how
the
much,
strategy I'm
like,
exploring.
yeah, because VCs, you're looking for millions and more. Like when it comes to angels, like like 100 grand, 200 grand a throw, like what kind of like investment level are you like looking for? Like what does this kind of a project need to stay afloat, to kind of feed you guys, to keep building it out, to find more meatware to put behind the hardware, right? Like how do you to make this thing grow? What does a project like that kind of look like in terms? Because I think that's what a lot of people think, right? It's like, oh, AI, man, that's $1 billion thing. Like, what kind of money do you think is required for your kind of a project?
I love how you're asking that question, because it's a good reminder to always think of things like from first principles, or from scratch like that. If you try to apply a formula, like if I was to be like, I'm a B2B SaaS business, and B2B SaaS businesses raise $5 to $10 million is their first round, so that's what I have to do. you
Right.
know it's like, then you're probably not doing anything special in your, like, so I've thought a lot about what type of funding is for this business. When we were raising last year, we were raising $500,000 as our first tranche. I previously had a grant from Berkeley for like 125, so 500 was a nice step up. And for our particular project, we don't have compute costs really. We're not pre-training an AI on GPUs from NVIDIA, so we're not spending that money, right, by nature of the product. So really, it's just the meatware. I was very good at stretching my meatware, got it wafer thin, but
Yeah.
I wanted to get a bit more. Like we 500K would be enough to move us forward with a few more team members that I'm working with already, bring them on full time so we can move faster. But now rethinking that, because when I was thinking about that, it's like, how long does that take us to the next milestone to do that? That wasn't clear after the performance last year with the B2B exploration. So thinking now about the funding, I'm not sure really.
Okay.
Not sure what we would be looking for in this situation right
And
now.
how much do you like expect you give up as well? I'm curious. Like when you go into this, you're going into this like, VCs like they can ask for so much. They can, they turn you into an employee when it was your own thing to begin with.
I mean,
Um,
yeah, if that happens, that's really scary because it shouldn't happen that early, if at all.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think
I was
at this
anticipating
stage
giving
you
up.
got to be lean. You got to keep it. You got to keep it meatware strong. You got to keep the ownership with you. I would. Geez, I would even just go for convertible notes. Even from the angel investment. Like, it's like,
So that was another, like, to get more in the weeds there. That was maybe another thing I did last year that inhibited our fundraising, is I was insisting on convertible notes with investors,
oh yeah,
and I wanted to do them as uncapped
oh
because
wow, okay.
I was like, I was giving a steep discount,
Hmm.
but I was trying to do uncapped because of what you suggested. Maybe I would have had an easier time if I didn't do that. Um,
Yeah, I
so
think what you need is some bait. You need you have this bigger you have the master plan, but what you also need is like the one smaller, like the vanilla thing that you can just sell, right? Which is kind of
okay,
like the window into AO, right?
yeah,
Like if you could produce something that was easily, I mean, even if it was some uh even if it was something that was like a secured way, I mean, I'm just making stuff up now, but like something that, like a plug-in to like your QuickBooks, like that was basically so secure, doesn't connect to an external brain, so it meets cybersecurity risks, and it would just work with your bookkeeping, do your accounts for you, because no one likes doing accounts, right? And so it's like even the accountants don't like doing
yeah.
accounts, right? So it's like it's like everyone's trying to palm it off to somebody else, right? They have bookkeepers of bookkeepers of bookkeepers. So it's like
Turtles
what
all the way down.
yeah, it does. And like you could have the biggest company and you could be paying them. And I've done this before. I've walked into a very expensive accountancy firm who was paying $25,000 a month on their retainer just to do my accounts. I had a huge business, and I would walk in. I stormed in one day, and I remember trying to find the main guy who I'd always speak to, and it was, oh no, speak to him, and I'd find the next person, and finally I'd find this cubicle guy who was like just sweating from the brow, like just underneath. It looked like something from the dark ages, because it's like with all the technology and computers we have, this guy was running through. He had a calculator on his desk. He had a ton of papers up. I'm like, what happened to you? Like, did they like punish you and not give you the computer access or something? Like, but everyone just palms it off, and it is a real manual job. Maybe there's something you can do there where this thing can help compute certain things. I don't know. Like that's
Yeah,
probably
but you're hitting the nail on the head. Is like, I do think if we can find one application, it would really move things
one
along
little one.
further. One
It's
little
just a
one, right?
breakthrough one. It doesn't even have to be that groundbreaking. It
Yeah,
just
things take time. Things take time. Like if I put my hat on, like if I try to take the long view, it's like AI that we talk about with GPT started in 2011, 2012, and that itself was based on research from earlier. So I kind of have just to be honest with the process and kind of get what comes. Conversations like this are very helpful because I've been in the weeds so much that in some sense I've turned off my product manager brain. So when I talk to users or talk to people who know application or who know specific industries, it's easier to think of applications. I'm
dude.
always down to talk to anyone who can conceive of an application for this.
Hang on a second, Tamagotchi. This is one thing you said. You said this the first time we spoke. I just had that memory. It just come. You got to call the people who make Tamagotchi. I don't even know who they are. Just say, hey, look, I've got an upgrade.
Yeah.
Let's do a
That
joint
Sabrad,
venture.
you're tugging at my heartstrings here for sure.
Let's do a joint
Um,
venture. Let's like do a limited release. Let's see what we can drum up. And this thing's gonna be like the best Tamagotchi ever. It's gonna learn. It's gonna be like a companion. It's gonna know it's gonna have a relationship with the owner. Okay, so
yeah.
they're really gonna feel bad if their baby dies, if their Tamagotchi, And so the heartstrings, you talk about heartstrings, the heartstrings that are going to be pulled with this are going to be phenomenal. I mean, don't even let
Yeah.
me talk about dating apps, but like, or a dating companion. Oh, what, like wingman or something? Okay, I'm becoming silly now. But like, the thing is, if you find, I think the Tamagotchi idea is great. Like, if you went into that and you had another company that kind of bear the cost of it, so they've got the physical product, you've ported in your application so that it can just upgrade the nuance of something like a Tamagotchi. That in and of itself could be your route into
Yeah,
the
it's a
market,
compelling product. That's a compelling product for sure. You know, that
and that will
idea came up
feed
through.
your master plan.
Yeah,
Because that's the
yeah,
thing. It's like, if you're thinking about the ladder of like, um, what's going to be your cash cow that feeds like the rising, the Boston Matrix. You've heard of that. Like, you've got the cash cow, and you've got the thing that feeds the rising star. And it's like, you want to be working with that kind of mindset. It's like, what can I do to
yeah,
drive revenue through the door? What's going to be attractive for investors? They want to see ROI. I get it. So let me give them something that they can chew on while I build this like amazing thing. It's kind of like the Tony
yeah,
Stark, right? Here, let me just sell some weapons and I'll build an Iron Man suit in the background. Like, it's like,
yeah. No, that's actually quite interesting to think about at this juncture when I'm revisiting all of this.
I'm
Um,
sure. Man, your brain must be
it's
turning over.
it's like also a big context shift. Like last year when I was trying to do this process of basically enterprise sales, 100 developers, and then trying to do this process of like fundraising as well. It completely, like, I was coding a little bit in summer, especially to build up the API to support that effort. But it's a mindset shift from building and coding, right? So you're sparking those. Like some of this I could build on my own to get this started, right? And that's how you have to go. You just have to just keep going.
And that's amazing, by the way, because you're the artist, right? You are the person with the skill. And I think that's one thing I like to say to people in business. If we just circle this back to like just people in general, like, become an expert in something that you can do. Because look at what you're saying right there. You'll go back to the drawing board and you'll start taking some of these ideas, taking stock of what we've spoken on, and then you'll have your own whatever's floating around your own mind, and you'll start applying things, and you'll start creating things. That
Right.
I mean, that's that's creativity at its best there, and you're the person who's able to actually execute too.
Hopefully
That's
we're
brilliant.
planting the right seeds, right? Hopefully we're planting the right seeds. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
it's
and
it's
you're
it's been a journey
constantly
for sure.
growing.
It's been a journey for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, look, man, like, I feel like that's a lot to take in. I'm just thinking, there's so many. I can see where you're thinking. I don't know everything that you're having to consider, but I can guess. And I'm also, and at this, and just guessing, I'm also feeling the weight of it, because there's a lot. And then there's like this huge tidal wave of a surf, if that you want to catch, that's massive, and there's a
I'm kind of
ton
waiting
of
for it
money
to
being
die
thrown
down a
at it.
little bit. I'm kind of waiting for it to die down because it's too big of a wave that people are like, people are like squirrels right now, like AI.
Yeah.
To,
Yeah. I
to
mean,
some
look,
degree.
you got people like me, complete idiots, talking about something they have no business speaking on. Like, I'm just trying to understand it. And thank you for
Yeah.
giving me the time and
Well, so let
having
me
the patience to kind of go
maybe
through
get
it with me.
some thoughts from you here, Savraj, on the distribution topic. So, as
Hmm.
I've been rethinking the strategy that I learned last year and revisiting and thinking how to move forward, and this conversation is super helpful. One, aside from that killer, or like that first app that can really prove the technology, um, I've been thinking of just being a bit more open with developers instead of trying to do it as a B2B product, riding off the developer interest, because there's a lot of developers these days who have played with AI, but then they've encountered the hallucination or reliability problem. And a subset of those would be maybe more interested in AI in general, who would be a subset I could talk to and maybe build with. Um, so that was one strategy I thought, and that entails like open sourcing the repo. Right now, it's not open sourced yet. Open sourcing it and kind of like building more in public. Um, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that off the top of your head. That would be more like a bottom up. I'm still thinking in B2B SaaS terms, but like more of a bottom up strategy from developers. But it's
Well,
also
from a
like,
distribution perspective, all right, before we go into distribution, I had another idea as you were talking, and I was like, the AI antivirus. Like this is like the friggin' Norton. You could create the Norton for AI, like because it's such a closed, smaller version. Like it has a very specific set of rules. It learns based on what you do, and maybe it can be like the thing that kind of tames the bigger robot that you use as well. Like everyone's
Puts it in
trying to use chat.
context. That's the idea. Is like the AI we have is so smart, but it's really context free.
Yeah.
Intelligence always comes with a context or with a perspective. We're kind of giving it that context. So yeah,
this
the
is
merge, the
AI
idea,
anchor.
yeah, operating system in some sense. That's
Yeah.
yeah,
To make
yeah.
sense.
That's the vision for sure. That's the vision. So it's like how do
Okay,
we?
I'm gonna stop just throwing stuff out because I could probably like.
No, I love it. I love your energy, dude. Thank you. You're gonna become an AI developer by the end of this conversation.
Probably like watch me. I'm gonna start buying books now and start like studying. Like, okay, how do I do this? So when it comes to distribution, the concept of distribution, there's a couple ways that I explain it. So when people ask me what's the vanilla version of distribution, I said, well, it's all the people, places, and things that have access to the customers that you want, right? And then you want to basically rope them in to sell the thing that you're trying to sell. That's the essence of the distribution channel. Whatever it is you're selling, whether it's your own product that you've created or a product that someone else has created, a distribution channel is the intermediary that has access to the customer you're trying to sell it to. In the world of B2B, it's not that dissimilar, but it gets a bit nuanced. So especially when it gets to like back-end products, like what you're talking about, very complex products, kind of like financial instruments. But when you're, I mean, the whole, I'm not going to get too deep, but like there's a lot there. So what you're trying to do is you want to find out who's whispering in the right ears in the right boardroom. And so that's what you want. You want to be positioning yourself strategically. So you've got to kind of position yourself as a thought leader, number one. You've got to position, there's a bit of like foundation work that you need to do to kind of like having yourself strategically and correctly positioned on a chessboard, for instance. So that the next moves that you make as far as distribution, when they turn their heads and look back at you, you're in a position of power. That's the most important thing, because it's not too difficult to get to the person. I mean, I started out as a headhunter. So there's one thing I know about is humans are humans. And if I want to get hold of someone in the boardroom, it's not that hard to get hold of them. If I want to speak, there's ways to get hold of people, and there's like, some dastardly tactics you can do to get past gatekeepers. And we learn all those things as headhunters because that's your job. The whole thing is about getting past gatekeepers and speaking to the guy you're trying to get out of a job to create a void so you can fill that job. And so getting to people is not that big of a deal. But it's making sure that the setup's correct so that when they do take notice and when you are looking at them and speaking with them and presenting an offer, they look back at you. You've got to make sure you're situated. And so that's the most important thing. And so if you can do that, then establishing relationships in the B2B world doesn't always even have to be, you don't even have to be in a situation where you're selling something. You could be selling the concept. You could be sharing the secret. There is a secret. There is something that's growing. I mean, AO Labs is basically growing something, okay? It's got massive future potential for application. And so you're bringing people in just because the allure in and of itself, okay? So there's lots of things that you can do to
interesting.
To drive the interest, because that's what you want. You want to drive interest before you start putting a price tag on it. You don't even how much can I get involved for? We're not even going to talk about price yet. You can pledge 100K minimum, but we're not capping. There's things that we can do. I mean, I think I'd really need to look into. We would have to have a longer conversation where you really explain a little bit more about the nuts and bolts. And so you've gone through developers. Now, developers, they work for other companies.
I assumed we'd have to go through developers because with our type of AI, they kind of have to configure it for their application.
Yeah.
As opposed to it's just pre-trained and you're applying it, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I thought it was even more appropriate to go through developers, like bottom up in some sense.
Well, yeah, no, because that's a very smart move, because that's where I would have suggested you go, because you don't want to go through the top down because they don't know what you're talking about. You want the most trusted product manager who's speaking to the panel of investors and who has to report to the investors and senior management, VPs and CEOs. You want that person to come to the table and say, hey guys, I know we're building this thing out. There's a component that we could add. I don't have it, but I'm talking to someone that knows how this, we can kind of figure it out together. And I think we should bring them to the table. That's the kind of the whisper in the ear that we're talking about there. So it's coming in from that side. And you can leverage that. You can make that happen because you have something that's truly valuable. And it can deliver on what it promises, at least in its current state. You say you have it from a research perspective, it's provable, it's demonstratable. And then even in application, you can prove and demonstrate capability. And because of that, you can have that conversation and you can take it up that ladder. And that's how I would do it. And you are on the right track. The only difference is you've just got to start hitting more. You got to get way more of them actually speaking for you. It's all well and good to have the strategy and think that that's okay. Strategy is one thing. You can pick up a book and get strategy. When it comes down to it, it's execution. It's how many people can you have whispering, so, at the same time, right?
People are pushy. You're right. It's like, I kind of, I'm going to spend another month or two just in the research, revitalizing
You've got to
that
put your Steve Jobs hat
But
on.
then,
you got the Wozniak thing going on right now. You got to have the Steve Jobs hat, and you got to go. Yeah, I'm telling you.
You should have seen me, Sab, when I was here in 2021, like just coming out of Berkeley, hairier and everything. It was total Woz.
Yeah, but now you got to start shouting from the mountaintop. Because what you like. But if you don't do it, then you got to get someone that can bust through those doors.
If you know anyone who'd be interested in these ideas to collaborate in that level, I'm open to collaborators at every level, really, because I've just been doing this I've been working on this since 2018, so I'm more about getting it out there because I see the value rather than any attachment to details.
Yeah, well, listen, we'll talk, man. It's not like you see a lot of the companies that I work with. It's like simple stuff like real estate, friggin' CBD lipstick, hemp handbags. And we're pushing those through influencers around the world. Even when it comes to raw materials, there's always like predefined distribution channels for these things. And the beautiful thing is with what you have, there are predefined channels to get this kind of stuff around. The only thing is that you have something that requires a certain level of experience and intelligence to be able to figure out, so that they can articulate it to the person that who has the check.
It's like early adopters on steroids. We need people who are really in the know.
Well, it's kind of like you have to follow the insurance. Actually, you say doctors. It's how insurance companies do it. Like, you look at how much money they spend on ads. Forget insurance. In fact, sorry, pharmaceuticals. When you see those ads out there, like Ozempic or whatever, right? You see how much money that you think that they spend on ads. Like, and they must, they could easily be spending $100 million on ads per quarter, right? Do you know how much money they spend on actually the people going into the doctor's office to educate them and skill them up on the new drugs that are coming out? It's probably quadruple that number, definitely double. So they're spending way more on the people that go behind the scenes, that are essentially their distribution networks that go directly to the people who are the decision makers, the doctors that actually prescribe. And so if that's where their budget's going, you've got to kind of think in the same capacity.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Activate the experts in the space.
Yeah.
Who would be our first allies. Interesting.
All right. I think, look, we've got to speak again. I think I'm going to follow what you're doing because there's so much that's growing and there's so much change ahead. And I'm curious to see how you do this. And if I can help you, I will. Just because I kind of want to be part of that journey anyway. Like, screw it, man. Like, I'm going to, I get to be part of this AI thing? Hell yeah. I'll help you out. So it's like, that's exciting in and of itself. And I just think, but you can, I think we should, like, I say this to a lot of my podcast guests, and I mean it every time I say it. And I think we should definitely reconnect as well, like in a couple of months, just to see how things have changed, how things have gone. Because, it would be so cool to just document, like, okay, this guy had this thing, it was a clam, now he's got a friggin' tiger. Okay, so, so we can have that conversation too. And it's just whichever way it goes. I think it's just so cool and so exciting to see. You see all the big companies in space. When you hear AI, I'll finish on this. You hear like Google, DeepMind, Gemini, went from Bard, killed Bard, made Gemini. Then you got like, AI, Open AI with ChatGPT 3.5, then 4, and now you have to pay for it. Now you have to, then you had that. Then you have, yeah, and it pretty much turning the thing into Java. It's like you got this, like you start speaking to your ChatGPT now. Like that's pretty much what I'm doing all the time, just when I'm just shooting ideas around. Then you
Oh, you
have,
actually speak to it in voice?
yeah, just I do it sometimes. I'll have literally a conversation with the thing. Normally when I'm coming up with like business names or marketing plans, stuff that just needs creativity that my brain's just like getting too tired to figure out these days. Like, okay, give me a catchy headline that encompasses this and this and has these words in it. And give me 15 versions.
Yeah, it's very helpful in that way, like a
It'll help
search. I
me.
think of it like a search.
Yeah, it'll help me get the conversation going. Help me get my brain, my brain turning over and my juices going. There's that, and then you've got like what happened recently with like Grok. Elon Musk saying that he's about to make that open source, and it's like everything is moving so fast, but these are all really big companies. You're not really hearing so much with the smaller guy, the guy who's like, well, you know what? I'm building something real special, and it's fledgling at the moment, but it's going
Oh
to
yeah.
grow. It's going to grow. We
Hopefully,
haven't
we're like a
unplugged it. This
tadpole.
thing's growing. You said it. It's living in the clouds. This thing's running. It's getting smart. While we talk, it's been thinking. It's been doing something. So that is, yeah, that's exciting. All right, cool. All right, man. We have got to that point. I think we need to just call it because we could keep going.
Awesome.
I know.
Yeah,
I
let's
can.
do this again soon. Let's
I
do
know
this
I
again
could
soon.
keep going. Yeah, we have to. Absolutely. Listen, for anyone that is listening that has found what you're saying to be as interesting and exciting as I have, and that want to reach out to you, how do they get hold of you, man?
Oh, you can go to aolabs.ai, our website. It has all my contact information there. Just get on my calendar or let's chat sometime.